Welcome to another edition of a video no one will watch. In this episode, we're going to ring a bell with the help of telemetry webhook functionality inside WTI devices. Basically, the modern hip equivalent of a trigger relay contact. To accomplish this, we need to first create a mechanism to ring a service bell, a project fleshed out by Jeff Geerling. We put together a Raspberry Pi Zero running the Apache web server, Python, some custom soldering, and a 3D printed case. That went through a few revisions on our 3D printer before we finally get it right. And of course, a service bell. Wow, that could get really annoying. I think we'll put this gear down in sales when we're done. The next thing we need is a WTI device to send a webhook message from. Before we do this, let's define what a webhook actually is. A webhook has many different names for a process that can be handled different ways. So it's complicated to nail down a universal definition, or even a name for that matter. But for our purpose, let's define a webhook message as a message that allows you to send real-time data, in our case JSON data, via HTTP, HTTPS to another endpoint that accepts HTTP, HTTPS. In this demonstration, the other endpoint is our Raspberry Pi with a service bell. Okay, so let's get started. I won't bother you with the details of the Raspberry Pi setup. Suffice to say again that it's some custom hardware with the Apache web server and Python. On the WTI device, we need to tell it to send a webhook alert to the Raspberry Pi. We can do this by accessing the WTI telemetry menu and hooking up a webhook delivery message to the Raspberry Pi. And here's how we do it.
Okay, let's start an SSH session on the WTI device. Let's enter the password. Let's get into the telemetry menu. It's an event-based alert, which means every time there's an alert event on the WTI device, it should perform an action. So we'll take number 2, we'll take slot number 1, and we'll give it a name of bell alert. And then the command, we were going to paste in our webhook command that goes to the Raspberry Pi, and we're going to enable it, and we're going to escape out of here, and then we're going to log out, and we get the bell, and we're going to log in again, and we get the alert sent to the Raspberry Pi, which will give you a bell. We'll log in, out again, and finally log in. And that's how you send a webhook alert from the WTI device to a Raspberry Pi.
Now again, what's happened is that when we log in or out, there's an alert message generated and logged internally to the WTI device. If we have syslog or another telemetry event defined, this information will also go out to that service, along with the webhook sequence to the Raspberry Pi. Thanks for listening. Let me know if you have any questions.